Good morning, Idaho. Welcome to the Local Yokel Idaho podcast, where we talk about what is going on in the wonderful state of Idaho. For those tuning in for the first time, we'd like to have a little bit of banter before we get into the stories, but I understand if you're short on time, so we provided timestamps in the description so you can jump straight to the stories that you're interested in. For those that stayed for the banter, welcome. Glad to have you join us. I know the banter is one of the parts that I love a ton. It's a fun time to talk with John and just have a little less structure generally and chat with you guys. Hopefully you've been all enjoying the spring weather, or for those that aren't in the valley or Treasure Valley area, trust me, it's coming for you guys over there in Stanley. I know it's still snowy, so it'll come. It will come. Granted, it may be June or July before it comes, but it will come. But before I go any further, the show would not be complete without John, who's going to be co-hosting with me again today.
Well, I don't know if that's exactly true, but I am here, and so I guess we'll make the best of it. Yeah, I think we've lived in Idaho for, let's see, 2019 to 2024. 5 years. We've been here for 5 years. See, I can do math sometimes. I am an electrical engineer.
The calculator falls off the back of the desk.
Yeah, no, that's how I've gotten by in my entire life. I am a calculator kid. Sadly, I never had one of the cool, watch calculator things, although I really wanted one back in the day. Dude,
why can't my smartwatch do that? Okay, I need to find an app. No.
Wait, does the smartwatch not have
not by default
calculator?
That I know of.
That's
a wasted opportunity.
Oh my gosh. I tell you, man, I had friends who had the little calculator watch, and it was, giant honking thing. And yeah, I wanted one real bad. But no, I can't do math. Anyway, so we've been here for 5 years, and yeah, the weather here is awesome, and it's crazy. And the thing that has blown my mind the most is the amount that weather varies from one place to the other. We lived in New Mexico, and yes, northern New Mexico got colder than southern New Mexico. Southern New Mexico is a barren desert. Northern New Mexico is, getting into southern Colorado mountains. So southern Colorado is obviously a little colder and wetter than the desert. But man, it's nothing like it is here, where you go from Stanley to the Treasure Valley, and it's like you're in two completely different.
You're like, I got on a plane and I traveled to other part of the globe, and you're like, no, this is the same state. You only traveled 200 miles.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's awesome. I love it.
Oh yes, especially I love it specifically when it's summertime, and it can be 100 or something in the valley, and I can drive up to some mountain peak and it'll be snowing, and I can just be like, yes, I like this. Even the strangest is some points, it's rare, some points, but you can go up to Bogus, and you can be sitting there and the snow can be falling maybe a little bit around you, and you can look at the valley and see the scorching heat while you're in the snow. It's a real special feeling.
Yeah. My wife and I honeymooned in Hawaii back when we got married, obviously. And we went to the Big Island. And now on the Big Island, you've got two mountains. You've got Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa. I don't remember which one's which, but one of them has snow on the peak, always. It is that tall. And so locals will drive up to the top, fill up a truck with snow, bring it down to the beach, and build snowmen on the beach.
Oh my goodness.
And so there's almost always snowmen on the beach, I can't remember which side's which, but on whichever side is the touristy side of the island. And yeah, it was awesome. There's just snowmen on the beach.
Just the dichotomy of those two.
Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing. So yeah, to hear that you can go into the mountains and there's snow, that it reminds me of the Big Island. And so the Big Island was a lot like that, a lot like Idaho is, where you go. I mean, you can't drive very fast because
island,
but you drive for an hour or two and you're in a completely different climate zone. I don't remember which side of it, because my memory of the geography of it is I don't know. My memory's not great. Anyway,
it's not there.
It's not there. But there's one side of the island where it's high desert. And it's always windy. And the crazy thing is, the cows lean into the wind, at a pretty gnarly angle, to the point that if it were to stop blowing, they would fall over. And the trees all grow into the wind, and everything is just slanted into the wind, and it's amazing. And I loved it.
Almost sounds like the equivalent of Australia, where you're like, nah, everything slants here. Flip side Australia, everything's upside down type of joke.
Everything's upside down. Yeah, which, I mean, obviously on Australia, you have to hold on or else you would fall off the bottom of the earth because that's how gravity works.
Yeah, that's totally what Newton determined in his different papers.
Well, he went to Australia and saw that the apple fell up. So,
Yeah,
that's how it works.
that's how it works. Works.
That's science.
Parents,
that's what
check
happened.
with your kids on that. They might not know this true.
Whatever. I went to college. I know things.
We're on a show. There's video. We know something.
That's right. Hey, it's on the internet, or it will be on the internet as soon as we upload this. So that means it's true because this is on the internet in the future. So retroactively, it's true now, in the future. Now.
The syllogism there was chaotic.
That's right. That's right. That's what I bring to this show. Frankly, you should probably fire me.
No. And I will continue to say no, but I mean, similarly related on that crazy part, my week has also been crazy.
So jumping off the crazy train, we're going to continue on the crazy train.
Yeah, basically, that's how that works. You can tell that the craziness has somehow gotten into my head a ton. Because not only I had the trip that I did last week, and we moved to this new format, which I hope you guys are all enjoying it. It looks like it because the show last week, both on the audio only and on the YouTube, did really, really well. So
It actually did.
Yeah, it did very well. I think on YouTube we did 77 views. On the audio only, I looked on there, and I think we had this huge, massive spike. I didn't go try to track down each component because audio only stuff isn't really nice about telling you where you got those views from. It's kind of really difficult there. But we're very thankful for that and that growth and stuff. Also, I think most of the things are set up on the locals page. I need to get a code thingamajigger or whatever figured out, but I haven't done that yet. But if you want to at least follow over there, because we're making sure to post everything kind of there, so it's a nice centralized spot. You get that, and then once you guys either want to support us with stuff, we'll get that going. But that said, as I said, loopholes here. Crazy week. I also took on a full-time job to pay for certain things to keep the wheels going because I did have that, but then that ended up not working out, and then I haven't had that for a little bit, and now I have another one, and so trying to do this, and then we moved to a new format. It's just been a trifecta. I didn't plan for it all coincide that way, but it did. But it all seems to be working out thus far. So as we're recording this, if you notice my eyelids lagging, it is just for the fact that I have been going and going.
Yeah, well, as a very famous man once said, crazy, but that's how it goes. Millions of people live in this world. I don't know the rest of the song.
Who what is that reference from? Is it just me being younger? I don't know that.
Probably that's Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne. Crazy.
Watch out for the copyright now.
Yeah, I know. I definitely got copyright struck once on a live stream because someone saw the guitar in the back. Oh yeah, no, it was hilarious. I pulled out the guitar. I was playing. It wasn't Sweet Home. What? Oh, the John Denver song, West Virginia.
He'll know. I won't.
I can't remember. It has a name.
Yeah,
Almost
most
Heaven,
things
West
have a
Virginia.
name.
It's sometimes not at this, not when I'm this tired, but most things have names. But yeah, I started singing that song, and YouTube copyright struck my live stream, and I was like, "What? My terrible rendition of this? Okay, for all 5 viewers I have."
Goes humming into the mic, and then the live stream. You're like, what?
Yeah. So yeah, that.
The joys of modern
technology. I probably had to cut out my singing.
You wouldn't get to hear John's amazing singing abilities, which he does.
I was going to say that's probably good for the listener to not be.
No, you're just detracting from them.
Or I would have been detracting from them in the future when it's posted.
This is fair.
Further complicating things.
Anywho, our banter this week is going to be weird. It'll be very interesting to see what it comes out on the other end of the editing floor. What components you guys do or don't get. But in the interest of keeping a little bit of order, we'll move on to our first story here. But as I said, grounding ourselves a little bit here. Last week and over the last month, we've been diving into fun facts in Idaho. Just give us a little bit of a break from the drama of politics in the state, because we had that for several months. This segment is no exception, and it will be diving into some of Idaho's biggest exports based on quantity and value. Now, some of you may think it is boring, but just bear with us here. We want to give you some extra understanding of what makes the state tick and some of the unheard industries in the state. So, with that said, John, would you like to start us off with our first exports that we kind of had, the big ones here in the state?
Yeah, so Idaho's top 5 exports by tonnage are number 1, cereal grains, and we produce a lot of these. So we rank number 1 in barley production with 60.5 million bushels, number 8 in winter wheat production with 56 million bushels, number 4 in spring wheat production with 32.4 million bushels, number 5 in durum wheat production with 650,000 bushels, and then number 5th in wheat production at almost 90 million bushels. Our second largest export by tonnage is logs. In 2022, Idaho ranked 8th among U.S. states in softwood lumber production at 1.72 billion board feet. That's an interesting expression, billion board feet. Anyway,
Yes.
Our third main export is other agricultural products. And we couldn't dig into these numbers because the source wouldn't give it to us.
The main source I was looking at for this tonnage is that the easiest way to see this is to look at ITD's regulation on where they're seeing the amount of goods moving throughout the state on weight, because they have to. That's why you have those weighing stations around the state
Right.
that you see and stuff. But they wouldn't break down what that weight was. It was just like, hey, everything else that doesn't land in our normal categories of agriculture, that's number 3. And I'm like, well, that's great. And then food products
Lame.
would be like, I'm guessing food products probably lands in all the stuff that Horizon does.
Yeah,
That's a milk
probably.
company, different stuff. That it is a food product, but it isn't an ag product, but it's not a whatever. I'm surprised they wouldn't call it dairy, but that's where like number
Yeah.
4 comes in. And then milled grains, I'm not sure why that doesn't go with wheat, but they also separated that out. That comes in at number 5. And then you kind of get into the value ones.
Right. And so then going back to the value, yeah, I don't know why they would break it down the way they did, but that's how they did it. So that's what we got. So then the top 5 products or top 5 exports by value are first, computer and electronic products at 1.7 billion, which I didn't know that. That's kind of cool. And then food and kindred products at 562 million, and these are all from 2018. Chemicals, $308 million. Machinery, except electrical, which that seems odd that you would pull out electrical. I don't know. And that's at 282 million, and then transportation equipment at 180 million. So that rounds out the top 5 in both tonnage and value. But looking at the remaining in both of those, so the remaining 4 in tonnage are other prepared foodstuffs, and then waste or scrap, gravel. In 2021, Idaho produced 427,000 metric tons of sand and gravel, according to data from the National Stone, Sand, and Gravel Association. 2 things here. 1, I didn't know there was a National Stone, Sand, and Gravel Association. And 2, that's pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
That's a lot of metric tons of sand and gravel. So go Idaho. And then 4th is non-metallic mineral products, which that goes back to, I guess both of those things go back to all of our talking about mining, because where else do you get gravel but
Mining, baby.
mining? Yeah, that's funny. So then the remaining 5 of the top 10 of the value items, we produce dairy products, and that's 356 million. And then these numbers are all from 2017. Processed vegetables at 296 million. Wheat, again, 296 million. Beef and veal at 179 million. And fresh vegetables at 158 million. And Tyler, do you want to go through what are the top 4 weirdest exports that we do here in Idaho?
I would love to. And as we've seen, obviously, Idaho leans a lot into the agricultural side of things, and many of the things we do are mining. And when you get into the weird ones, that is very true. It gets more into the organic department. First being fish eggs or sturgeon caviar. Idaho exports sturgeon fish eggs, also known as caviar. A company called Fish Breeders of Idaho in Hagerman sells these precious sturgeon eggs at $1,000 per 1,000 gram tins. They claim that sturgeon caviar is among the best in the world. Then the second one is bullfrogs. I know, this one took me for a spin. I thought it was a typo. I thought it was buffalo, but no, it's bullfrog. A company
Clearly.
called Rana Ranch Commercial Bullfrogs in Twin Falls. So if you're over there, maybe, I don't know, drops by. Exports live bullfrogs. These bullfrogs are sold to medical researchers working on treatments for hearing loss, nerve damage, Alzheimer's, and cancer. So I guess you could say that's beneficial that we're making guinea pigs, but slimier ones at that. And the
I
other
mean,
one
guinea
is
pigs, lab rats, bullfrogs. I guess they're all the
right.
same.
Yeah, as I said,
Who
a
would have
lot
thunk
of
it?
these are going to be in the animal or organic category because that's where weird things happen. And then number 3, we have yak meat. Idaho exports yak
Obviously.
meat from farms like Taylor Ranch Yaks in northern Idaho. According to them, yak meat is very lean with only 4% fat compared to 24% in beef and 9% in chicken. So if you're a person who's trying to avoid fat, which I wouldn't recommend, but that's my own personal thought process on that, yak meat is an option here in Idaho. And then number
Right?
4, kind of wrapping.
What's the disclaimer? We here at local Yokel Idaho are not medical experts, so talk to your doctor about what you should put in your body.
We should do a series or segment on with you where we just have you say you do the verbiage for like commercials and stuff, but it's for just certain Idaho things, unsolicited.
Just have me do an Idaho voiceover reel.
Oh
And talk to your doctor about what you put in your body.
no, what you put in your gun.
Talk to your
Talk to your
medical
local
professional.
ammo department. A more apt
Yep, there you go.
commercial right there. Anywho,
Anyway, bringing it back.
we're doing great. We're doing great. There's going to be so many wonderful bloopers. If you're on the locals, have fun. And then number 4, photographic plates and films. Because, yeah, we still do that in here in Idaho. We're very old-fashioned. Another top Idaho export listed is photography plates and films, including exposed and developed camera film, valued about $200 to $225 million annually in the state of Idaho. Which
Maybe that's an industry I should get into because, wow.
I don't know how that's still around and how it's also doing so much money. The only thing I can think is weird people like me that have typewriters and old things that are buying that. But I'm surprised that Idaho's the leader in that, but then also not at the same time. But that kind of wraps us up for...
Who's taking pictures on film these days?
The
I don't even know. Like,
the only people I've seen that do it is where they have like those older cameras and they like that look because there's a growing desire I've noticed with online, I think with millennials and stuff I've seen that they like
that is
more
true.
film grainy look, and certain people are like getting into it and kind of rediscovering kind of like you can also look at you have like the several different forms of like listening to audio. You've got you got CD or DVD. I can't remember which is which, but a disc form. You've got thumb drive, you've got like MP3 player, you have cassette, and you have record. Well, if I remember correctly, for 2023, vinyl outsold all of them.
Which is
for physical
hilarious. Media. And I'm riding that 8-track train.
Right?
I'm not actually at all, but it's funny.
Right. or the VHS, but that's video then. Anywho. So yeah, I mean, getting out of those weird ones, which you can have a lot of laughs with. I did not know about the yak meat. I know one here that I don't know how big of an export it is, but it's just something I know off the top of my head. There are several ranches in the state of Idaho that do raise buffalo. That's why originally when I saw the bullfrog one, I thought it was a typo when I was writing it
buffalo.
And researching it.
Well,
I was like, wait, it's buffalo. Wait, no, it's frogs. It can't be frogs.
Well, my goodness, buffalo is so good. I don't know if you've ever had like buffalo burgers or buffalo steak, but it's fantastic. So good.
I can't think I have, but I have had elk, and that's really, really good. It's really fatty and rich, and I really enjoy it.
Right?
Obviously,
elk
it depends on where they grow up, where they're eating and stuff
yeah.
like that, like anything. But I haven't pulled that trigger yet. Granted, I will say, hands down, my favorite leather, this is a very Idahoan thing to say, my favorite leather for boots, hands down, is buffalo leather because it's super, super tough. Like, you can treat it and it holds up to things and you can just beat the living daylights out of it. But on the flip side, it is so soft and malleable and just kind of you put your foot in that shoe and it'll just perfectly conform like it was made for you. But then it can take a beating at the same time. It is an amazing leather for shoes.
See, I used to wear boots when I was back in high school and college, and yeah, that is the thing I remember about them. After a little bit, they become like putting on slippers, and it was wonderful. Speaking of buffalo meat, though, the last time I was at the Idaho Fry Company, which was years ago at this point, because it was back when I was working in an office, which was pre-COVID. Anyway, there's the Boise, I think it's Boise, or Idaho Fry Company. There's
Fry
one
Company.
downtown. Is it Boise Fry? Cool. Boise Fry Company. Anyway, I remember them having buffalo on the meat as one of their options. They had like a vegan, an impossible, normal cow, and then they had buffalo, and that was fantastic.
Oh yeah, I know there's.
But here again,
I know you can find it if you go to a lot of the farmers markets in the valley, even if you're not wanting to
Yeah.
like go to a place to prepare it. Oh, I almost at this point, every time I go to a farmers market in the valley, you will be able to find some vendors selling buffalo meat there, so you can at least buy it and maybe. I'm guessing it'll cook very. It's probably going to cook quite similarly to what you do with cow burger, ground beef. Granted,
Probably.
it's probably got a higher fat content, if I'm guessing, which makes it so much more amazing.
I wouldn't be able to tell you. I just know it was wonderful when I bought it from a restaurant that prepared it for me.
Right. But I mean, bringing that back a little bit, obviously kind of going through this and going over this with cereals and grains and stuff, we get where that is. We grow a ton of that stuff. As we saw, even in the value part, grains, barley, stuff like that, wheat production, Idaho is very, very high in that. But I did want to make sure to do that contrast in this segment of the difference between tonnage and value. That there is a certain level that there might be something that like in just sheer quantity we produce a lot of, but that doesn't mean in value. On the flip side, then there might be something in value, like the amount of microchips or computer and electronic products. The volume probably isn't anywhere as near because it's not even in the top 10 we looked at on this list. But when you're looking at sheer value, that comes out to $1.7 billion.
Right, which is fascinating because, you mentioned electronics, and I know I mentioned it earlier that I didn't know we did that. So many of these things are interesting because our economy is such a, I don't know, a multifaceted thing.
Diverse.
Where there's diverse. Diverse is our strength is in our diversity, I think is the phrase. Maybe. Or our diversity makes us strong. I don't remember what the saying is, but one or the other. Anyway, it's true though for our economy, and if we have lots of different things that we produce and sell, well, then if at any time any one of those things is not doing great, well, we've got a lot of other things that are going on to make up for that lack, and so it's really interesting to me to see all of these different items from the ones that make us a lot of money, like the computer and electronic products, to the ones that are crazy, like yak meat and bullfrogs. Those are really cool industries, and they do actually help. Like, it's a good thing.
Right? And another one, just as we're talking about this, that I realized is huckleberries. Obviously, Oregon
yes.
has those too, but Idaho is a huge producer of those, which for
Yeah.
those gardeners out there, which I'm one of them, and probably if you listened to last week's episode where we talked about stuff related to gardening and planting, huckleberries are one of the few berries or plants and stuff that really isn't domesticated. So when you're having something that's huckleberry flavored, people had to usually like go up into the mountains and go to the huckleberry patches and pick it. It's not like you have a blueberry field or an elderberry farm.
No.
And they have to, I don't know specifically why, but they have to kind of organically grow on their own and be harvested and such that way. And so Idaho and parts of Oregon are kind of exclusively for the production of huckleberry. And if you're someone, I've had to realize this since I've grown up here. I've been like, oh yeah, huckleberry. But then people outside the state are like, what are huckleberries? Sometimes.
You mentioned needing to go up into the mountains and collect them. That's like the pinyon, is it the pinyon nut in New Mexico?
I've not heard of this one. This is a perfect example.
Oh man, yeah, pinyon nuts in New Mexico. They're like the thing, and you make coffee out of them. You make
What do they
you
taste
make all
like?
kinds of stuff. I don't know. I don't drink coffee, but apparently they're wonderful.
You're like, I'm going to give you this nut. And then what does it taste like? couldn't tell you, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But dude, everybody goes and collects pinon nuts in New Mexico, and it's hilarious because during that harvest time, in areas where people know that there are pinon trees, like there will just be cars lining the sides of roads, and people will go out with bed sheets and go shake trees and collect these things in mass. It's great.
Huh.
So yeah, like huckleberries here, pinon nuts there, and I think they might have some farms, but man, they just pinon trees grow wild in New Mexico. Great, and so
Right.
kind of like huckleberries here.
Right. Right. But yeah, totally a side tangent on that. But that's another thing. Example there in Idaho. But
Yeah.
I mean, another reason, and for that person that maybe is a little bit more skeptical and isn't super into the nerdy numbers and stuff, for me, this is always exciting. But, you know, there again, that's why I have a show that breaks down these numbers for those that maybe are listening that aren't as nerdy. Is that if you really want to see and you're wondering, well, why does the legislature do this? Or why do civil governments or magistrates do this and that? And why is there a heavy focus? Why can't they focus on these issues, these other things or whatever? Well, that's why looking at your main exports or your main industries in a state, specifically Idaho, can be really helpful for you to understand why is the legislature or why are civil or local government so focused on these topics? Well, because, for lack of a better word, they keep things running. That it keeps taxes, it keeps jobs for people, and also that as a state we need to be smart of what are those things that are really making us revenue and work and making our state independent from the federal government, instead of investing like things which there will be some stuff in the midweek report, like for instance Amazon, where we're like, no, we want to invest in these big companies and stuff. I would argue, no, we should look at these things that we're doing domestically and encourage those and keep growing them, so you're not reliant on companies that don't hold Idaho values sometimes.
Well, yeah, we talked about that. I think it was 2 weeks ago. We talked about the difference between a company that is owned and operated and lives and shares values that we have as Idahoans, or a company that has a large presence here but is from elsewhere. And there's a difference. I worked remotely for a company out in California, and they were a good company to work for. They did interesting work, but they had a very different outlook on all kinds of things, and that came through in the way that they did their work, in the way that they integrated with the world around them, with the way that they wanted their employees spending their time, and how they thought their employees should be spending their money. I was one of the very few people who had a family there, even at my age. And now, I mean, I'm what, late 30s? Am I almost 40? I'm almost 40. And I've got 5 kids, and they're the oldest is 11, and so I might have started earlier than the vast majority of people my age
Right.
at this point have, but man, I was one of the very few who had children at my age. And even looking at the highest up in the company,
That wasn't the culture in the company. It wasn't
wasn't
what
the
it
culture. And so,
attracted.
right. And so we talk about wanting the culture of the companies to reflect the culture that we have here. And to do that, we really need to have local companies that do local work. And so it's then good to know what those industries are, so that our lawmakers can encourage the growth of those industries, and then you as an individual or an entrepreneur, or I don't know, a
As a
potential
consumer.
lawmaker, or as a consumer, you can be informed about what will help your neighbors, and what
Right.
will grow the state that we live in, and will help those people around you. It's super important to know.
Right. And also something to kind of close this out on this segment before we go to the next one, but a point I really do want to make is that oftentimes I will fully admit, being this on the conservative side of things, we can look at the negative so bad. You know, we see China
Yep.
on the horizon, we see Biden on the horizon, all these things, and not to say these are not bad things. Far from it. There are things that are stressful. We do live in uncertain times. Thankfully, if you believe there's a God, he's there governing over the affairs of men, right? But these numbers should be encouraging to be like, no, we still can do things in the United States. We are still doing
Yeah.
things, and let alone we're doing it in our state. that you can encourage to be like, no, look, all the computers are made overseas. No, 1.7 billion of them are made here in Idaho, those components. That
Billion with a B.
with a billion. That should be very encouraging. Also, if you're worrying about, oh, are we being able to feed our population? Here again, we're not looking specifically at the quantities and the amount Idaho's consuming and different stuff like that, but we are producing a huge amount of agriculture, a huge amount of resources that should encourage us and make us not as fearful as we should be otherwise. That no, we are still doing things. Everything is not doom and gloom. We need to have a proper, well-balanced picture that, yes, things are bad. Things go through seasons of good and bad, but that doesn't mean that Armageddon's knocking right at the door.
Yeah, which is very true. And that's a thing that we as citizens need to be reminded of is, you're right. Armageddon's not knocking at the door. You can have children. It'll be okay.
Right.
You can raise children in this world. You can live for a higher purpose in this world. It's okay. You'll be fine.
Yes.
So go do it.
And independent of that, I would encourage you, independent of these numbers, even if they weren't there, that there is a God in heaven above that is in control of things. And even if these numbers were all negative, there is still a plan. There is still a thing being done. There's a lesson to learn and a glory to be given to him. But with that said, we'll move on to the next one. Which, hey, if you've made it this far, you've probably enjoyed the show. That probably means you want to keep it with all things Idaho. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button or follow button on YouTube, Rumble, or Twitter. That way you don't miss any of our future content about Idaho. And if you want to see all of our content in one place and or support us, we recommend you check out our locals page. It is a place for all things local, yokel, Idaho, and so much more. Also, for our audio-only listeners on platforms like iTunes or Spotify, please rate the show and leave us a review. With all that said, thank you for your support and being part of the local yokel Idaho community. Together, hopefully, we can keep Idaho informed, engaged, and involved in this wonderful state. Now, let's get back into the show, which is something we kind of teased earlier, and I didn't expect us to tease it so much in the banter. We have Idaho's strange weather habits. For those that have watched last week's Sunday show, you remember that we did a segment on when to plant your garden. If you didn't watch it and don't know when to plant your gardens, I recommend you check it out. But in that segment, we saw how Idaho has some exciting weather habits, some beautiful ones, and some other bothersome ones, to say the least. So for fun, in this segment, we're going to be looking at some of Idaho's weirdest weather habits. Some of them happen more often than you might think. So with that said, John, would you like to start us off with our first one, which is a little bit of a windy one?
Yeah, so one that, not being from here, I wouldn't have known. Idaho apparently has a tornado alley. So watch out for that. This is one that Tyler apparently talked about really early in our show. Our Tornado Alley, which stretches from the western Magic Valley around Hagerman into the upper Snake River Plain around the Idaho Falls area. It experiences a higher frequency of tornadoes than you or I would think for Idaho. This region has favorable topographic, well, that's a hard word. This region has favorable topographic features and wind flow patterns that promote the developments of thunderstorms capable of spawning tornadoes. Spawning, that's an interesting way to think about tornadoes happening as spawning. Anyway, while Idaho tornadoes are generally small, mostly EF0 to EF1, and short-lived compared to those in the traditional Tornado Alley states, they still occur regularly in this region, averaging around 3 to 6 per year statewide. The counties that have recorded the most tornadoes in Idaho are Bingham with 20, Jefferson with 16, and Power with 15, which fall within the Tornado Alley corridor. One of the more significant tornadoes in recent years was an EF1 tornado that struck West Boise in March 1984, causing damage to businesses and infrastructure.
Which, yeah, I didn't even know about that myself growing up here my whole life. And then I found out about it when I did that first segment, and I was just like, this is perfect. We'll just do it again. We'll add it in here. But something I did grow up with and I'm very acutely aware of, and I know it happens here in the Treasure Valley, but I don't know about the rest of the state, is inversions. This is one for anybody, obviously, like myself, that has lived very long in the Treasure Valley will know about.
Because they are the worst.
Yes. They have their pluses and minuses at times.
No, it's all negative. That's my personal opinion, and you can't tell me otherwise.
John is passionate tonight, if you couldn't find out.
Apparently.
That or he's slightly sleep deprived, probably a combination.
Well, you know. These things go hand in hand.
But for those that don't even know what we're talking about, it's a weather phenomenon where a layer of warm air traps cooler air near the surface, leading to a stagnant air mass. It occurs when the normal temperature profile is inverted, with temperatures increasing with the height instead of decreasing. The Treasure Valley's geography as a valley or low-lying area makes it prone to inversions, especially in the winter when nights are longer and the ground stays cooler. Basically, all that meteorological jargon aside, hot air gets trapped kind of like in a bowl, or cold air gets trapped in a bowl by hot air kind of above type of thing. You've probably experienced this and wondered what's going on. One of the main things that people notice when it's happening is inversions cause cooler temperatures, fog, frost, and dew on the surface with light wind movement to disperse it. This generally means that you have about 2 weeks where the temperature goes from about 35 in the day to about 20 at night. So it's cold and it just doesn't move that much. The air quality can decrease significantly during the inversions due to the trapped pollutants, leading to air quality advisories as well. Now, John, I know, sees no positive of them. I personally, there again, I've grown up with them, so maybe I'm just used to them, but I like how when we can get a ton of snow and we can get an inversion, and then everything can have the snow on top of it for weeks, but the roads will stay clear. And I love that. For me,
that is true.
Awesome, and that I love that about the inversions.
Well, the other thing is it causes the valley to be a little more moderate during the winter than other places I've lived. Because, like you said, 35 in the day to 20 at night. And that's kind of where it chills.
It's
it
just
doesn't
like a
get that
15 to
much
10
colder
degree.
than that. Right. Well, in 35 during the day, it's not that bad. And 20 at night, again, that's not that bad. Like, you might be freezing and thawing a little bit, but
right.
I mean, honestly, it works. It's not that bad. My problem is that it's cloudy for those 2 to 3 weeks and you just don't ever see the sun. And then when you do see the sun, that's because it's super windy and then it's really cold.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, that's just me being a curmudgeon and liking to see the sun. But you can just, like we mentioned much earlier, you can just like drive up a mountain and, you know, there's a sun and you can see it. So just drive for 30, 40, 50 minutes and you can find the sun again. So
it's Idaho. If you have a driver's license, then, you know, your scenery is limitless in the state of Idaho.
That is very true.
Speaking of things that are freezing, you want to go on to our next one here, John?
Yeah. So we've talked about this and shoot, we both alluded to it earlier. We have a Stanley. So Stanley apparently is a freezer and, so Stanley, Idaho, according to the National Weather Service, this area has recorded temperatures as low as negative 54 degrees Fahrenheit, which is really cold. That occurred on December 23rd, 1981. This is one of the coldest temperatures ever recorded in the continental U.S. Even today, Stanley is still just cold. In January 2024, Stanley saw the lowest temperature in Idaho at minus 28 degrees Fahrenheit, which I would convert to Celsius, but I don't know what that is. So we'll just go with minus 28. The primary reason for this is its geographic location and elevation. Stanley is situated in a high mountain valley surrounded by peaks over 10,000 feet, which is really high. This includes the Sawtooth, White Cloud, and Boulder mountain ranges. This bowl-like geography allows cold, dense air to drain from the mountains and get trapped in the valley, creating a cold air pool. It also doesn't help that Stanley is located near one of the driest regions in the U.S., and drier air allows for greater temperature swings between day and night, with nighttime lows plummeting. And I can attest to that, having lived in the desert. Albuquerque gets really, really cold at night almost all year, which is kind of nice. It's great in the summer when your highs are like in the hundreds and then your low is in the 60s. It's awesome. I love it.
Well, I know that's the thing I really like about McCall. There again, for certain logistical reasons, I probably couldn't manage it, but maybe down the line that'll change. But I love how with McCall that you could sit there in the morning, you can step out of your house with a cup of tea and you'll see the steam rise off it and you can still see your breath. And it can be August. It can be August in McCall.
Yep.
And then the flip side, it can come to the middle of the day and it'll be 90 degrees. But you'll still have pines to kind of hide under, and there'll be cool areas, and then it'll drop back down and be nice and cool to do stuff near the fire, different fire activities and stuff. For me, that is like the perfect. I want it warm during the day when I want to work, and then at the end points of the day, I want it cool to be out. And so if I need more warmth, I can put a jacket on. But as kind of we alluded to earlier, this weekend, actually, I just took a drive on Sunday with a good friend of mine. I went up to Stanley. And for all of you that remember the weather on Sunday, it was gorgeous. it was amazing. I think we were doing like maybe 70 or 60, right? Or something like that here in the valley.
Yeah.
We went up to the Stanley area. There was still about, I think, maybe 2-3 feet of snow on the ground.
Oh my gosh.
And the temperature was sitting at about 40, maybe 38 up there. And that only took us an hour and 45, some odd change in time to get up there. Just that temperature difference. It was gorgeous. I get it, but oh my goodness, I wouldn't want to be there at night. I have no idea what the low would be.
Yeah, no, Stanley is not that far away. I just pulled it up on the map. It's like
super close for Boise.
Yeah, dude. This state is wild.
Yeah,
love it.
You could easily take a day trip with your kids if you're someone who lives in Boise. Even just like an afternoon thing. Drive over there, stop for a little bit. Maybe they get to play in the snow or whatever, and then drive back. Because it is that just huge dynamic range that occurs there. And I know for a fact, it wasn't here in my notes, but there's actually a specific NOAA research station there in Stanley because of this interesting phenomenon that the other areas where the jet stream kind of actually comes down lower where Stanley's at and cools it as well.
That's hilarious.
So, point in case, you can argue that Alaskans got nothing on Idaho because we actually are very, very cold, just in one very specific area.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Idaho's a wild place. So we talked about some of the typical things here in Idaho,
Things that
but
consistently happen.
Right.
You can see
the consistently weird things. Some of the inconsistent weird things. There's been flooding in Boise. There was an earthquake.
Yeah. Up by Chalice, I think. And then we had one earlier this year and then one last year.
I was going to say last year, I don't know. I think it was during COVID. We had one in Boise. And I remember feeling it, like the chandelier in our house started to shake. It's like, what on earth is going on?
Right.
It's the weirdest thing.
And then another one that if you're someone who comes here and meets someone that has lived here for a bit, you'll regularly hear the term Snowmageddon. Don't ask me who first came up with that name. It is just stuck. I swear every Idahoan just organically came up with it because I can remember even before the whole thing ended, our household sang Snowmageddon, and then we went out and everyone else was saying Snowmageddon. Maybe it was a news station. I don't know, but that's the name it has. It happened like in 2017, 2016 roughly. It was kind of on that tail end of December, January-ish. But if you wonder why the Boise Highway Department has more plows now, and you might wonder why every single time it comes to wintertime, I'm giving you reports of them completely blaring it out everywhere. We have plenty of equipment. It's because of that. Because we got so much snow that when I lived in Boise in the time, the snow stayed for like 2 weeks and it was a foot or two deep. Boise's not used to that. It was amazing for me because I didn't have a job at the time and I was too young to have to worry about transportation. But I remember distinctly at like the maybe 2.5 week mark, me seeing it snowing a little bit more outside, and I'm a kid. I'm excited. I'm like, yay, it's more snow. Look, it's not gonna go. It's gonna be here longer. And I just hear this carnal groan from my father in the background, and we all look. What's your problem with it? He's like, the roof.
Oh, no. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, dude, the funny thing is, so I grew up in Michigan, and snow is just a way of life there during the winter.
Right.
And, if you want to know why I hate inversion so much, it's because Michigan is cloudy for, I don't know, 10 months of the year. That's an exaggeration. It's more like 5. But still, 5 months of the year, maybe 4. Mm-hmm. Maybe only 3. I don't know. It's a lot, and enough to drive people crazy and like legitimately depressed. There's disorders for that. We talked about that, didn't we?
Yeah, we've done a segment. Idaho ranks one of the highest in the nation for the amount of sunlight on a yearly basis.
Right, and isn't the disorder called SAD or something?
Yes, it is SAD. It's seasonal
affective disorder. Yes. Anyway, so Michigan sucks. Don't go there. Or if you're looking for a place to move, don't move to Idaho, move to Michigan. Yeah, Michigan's great. Move there.
Yeah, move
Anyway,
Go to Iowa. That's what you meant when you said Idaho.
yes,
See,
Iowa. Go live in Iowa.
You
There's
said
lots of
something wrong. It was
mountains.
Iowa. Don't worry. You just said it wrong. That's all.
There's mountains and it's beautiful.
Lots of corn.
Iowa. Corn. God, so much corn. Oh my gosh. Anyway, Michigan, yeah, we normally had like 2 to 5 feet of snow just on the ground, always. And so, I hear people talking about Snowmageddon and they're like, there was so much snow on the ground. We had like 2 feet for 2 weeks. I'm like,
and
yeah. Yeah, right. And do you know what the rest of the story is? No, that's the end of the story. Apparently that's a big deal.
well, also for the fact that for anyone that's listening up north, you're probably like, wait, that's a big deal in the Treasure Valley.
Two
For any of you that live
Come
in
on,
McCall, Stanley, as we
my
just
gosh.
talked about, you're probably rolling
like-
your head.
That's like listening to my wife. She's got a story. She was in school at a tiny college in South Carolina, and they had a dusting of snow, and they canceled school for like a week. Like there was a dusting, which is hilarious. I find that's one of my favorite things. Which I remember going to school in Western Michigan, and during the winter, there were points where the only place you could walk on campus were the sidewalks because you would have just like walls of snow. Now, they weren't higher than like 3 feet, but you had like 3-foot walls of snow. Western Michigan actually wouldn't be that bad of a place to live. If you want to go out into like Holland or Grand Rapids or further north, that would be okay. Don't go near Lansing or Detroit. That area sucks.
Yeah.
In my personal opinion.
But we're focused on
Right?
Idaho at the moment.
Yeah. States that don't suck.
Yes, states that have lots more sunlight, because I know people that have gone and moved to Michigan and lived here in Idaho, and then they'd come back and they're like, it's the promised land. Why did I ever leave? I'm like, yeah, why did you ever leave? Anywho, with that said, we've obviously probably beat it to death. Idaho has some really fantastic and very varying weather. And there are definitely extremes. I mean, the tornado half, thankfully, it happens in an area where there's not a lot of people. That's something I originally mentioned on my segment that I did a while back, is that, yeah, we have tornadoes, but they're in some of the least populated parts of the state, so it usually doesn't make any news. I do remember, as we said, there was one that touched down in Boise, but those are the rare exceptions. And many of these are in more rural areas, and sometimes the extremes are the rare exceptions. And an encouraging element for a lot of people, and it's another reason why I know a lot of people enjoy moving here, is that Idaho ranks 37th out of 50 states in terms of being affected by natural disasters that have caused over $1 billion in damage. This puts Idaho in the lowest risk category compared to states like Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas, which are at the very top of the list. So that's another part that's really encouraging, and something I've also, here again, I think it's an objective statement, even though I've grown up here and I'm heavily biased, is that the things you have to worry about natural disaster wise is, one, if it snows a lot, then you're like, well, how am I going to get to work? Well, I got to borrow my friend's truck or have a truck, right? And I have to make sure not to slam into someone else. Or number two, forest fires. That really is the main thing that really affects most Idahoans massively. Maybe there's some flooding in some areas if you're near river areas, or if you live in Eagle or places that are near river bottoms that, designers shouldn't have put houses there. That's my personal belief. But people like being near rivers, so fair enough. But in the grand scheme of things, most Idahoans, speaking as one, the idea of just constantly like, oh yeah, there's like a flip of a coin that my house might get gotten by a tornado or a hurricane or flooding that just happens all the time, or termites or something like here in Idaho. That's just not a thing, and I'm very thankful for it. And I think anybody that moves here, and us that have always lived there, for perspective, should be very thankful for it, that it's something that we don't have to have over our heads all the time. Yeah,
having lived in places where natural disasters can occur. We lived in Texas for a while. I lived in Virginia when I was real young, but listening to my parents talk about the hurricanes that it was hurricane season and everybody puts tapes on your window, and it's just a thing. You tape the windows because, they might break. Right. And you'd rather them not shatter all over everything. And that's just normal. That's normal. Yeah. It's normal. Yeah. Blows my mind.
But point in case, Idaho has very weird weather. And if, helpful fact from an Idahoan to anyone that's new to the state, if you want to have a really good conversation with an Idahoan and make them your best buddy instantly, talk about the weather. I guarantee you will start off well. Because
yeah, ask them about Snowmageddon.
We love to talk about. And it may seem like you're having to stoop down and be childish and be like, oh, yeah, that was really bad. Wink, wink. But trust me, we love to talk about it. And in some areas, it's for good reason that we do have a very unique state with a lot of unique weather that you, even in Boise or any part of the state, can easily go see. Which, with all that said, thank you for listening to the entire show. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to us by email at localyokolidaho2022@gmail.com or on Twitter by tweeting us at localyokolidaho. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.